All right. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Lett here. I am honored to be joined by Dr. Lauren Irwin. Listen, we are going to discuss a recently released book, Disrupting White Noise. This book is a perfect example of going from theory to practical impact. Without further ado, my guests will introduce themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those kind words. Theory to practice is really important to me. My name is Dr. Lauren Irwin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an assistant professor of higher education at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And I'm the co-author of Disrupting White Noise alongside my colleague, Dr. Zach Foste, who unfortunately couldn't join us for this conversation. So I'm going to do my best to represent both of us and speak some more about our work. So thanks for having me.
Yes, Dr. Irwin, thank you so much. It is truly an honor. It's truly a pleasure. We are going to be talking about this book throughout the interview. We will discuss where you're able to purchase this book. You have to buy it today, right now. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Okay, remind me. I'll send you a discount code so you can also post it for your listeners.
Yes, thank you. So no excuse. This book, it draws on years of experience and research, campus environments that reinforce white racial comfort and reproduce segregation, institutional policies, cross-racial engagement. Tell us, how are you able to synthesize all of that research, interviews into a book?
Yeah, that's a great question. Writing a book is no small feat. And so I learned a lot in this process. I should preface and say that Zach and I have been working and writing together for nearly a decade. And so much of that work is kind of represented in this book of different projects that we've done mostly separately and then brought together. So some of this felt like sort of the natural evolution of some of our work on, say, student development theory and whiteness, and then around campus housing, and some of my work in leadership education and some of Zach's current work. And so I think it was a mix of what are the highlights or nuggets from some of that work that we hadn't gotten to dig into yet? How did those speak to or reinforce one another? And what were some of the kind of unique contributions, so to speak? So the organization of the book ends up featuring a couple kind of contexts as the middle chapters, including students, like pre-college environments, campus housing, leadership, and some of their on-campus experiences. And so I think once we had sort of had the chance to dream and think about the larger argument, we were able to sort of zoom in a little bit more about what about campus housing can help us add to this argument? What about leadership? And then kind of go back to some of those data sources and craft them and analyze through a different lens. So I would say for anyone who's written an article or a dissertation, it was like that, but bigger.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It was such an incredible experience, really, to read the book and look at student life from a different perspective, one that drew on experiences of campuses across the country. Now, we have to ask, why was this book needed now?
Oh, that's a great question. I appreciate that. In full transparency, there's a couple of things that sparked the idea for the book and why we think it's really important now. The first thing, and Zach will talk a lot about this, but across the course of our work, Zach became a parent. And so those experiences shaped a lot about the ways he was thinking about research on white college students. And so some of his more recent work has shifted to thinking about how white students' pre-college experiences shape what they experience in college. And so that's sort of some of the conversations we were having that sparked this book. And so what we felt like was really missing was we have a lot of literature about what students experience in the K-12 system and their home communities. And we have a lot of research in higher education about campus climate and diversity experiences development, but many fewer studies have put those things in conversation and considered what it means to kind of treat those in isolation for, in this case, particularly white students. And so as folks who care very deeply about the campus climate, particularly the campus racial climate, and have, I would say, tried to do our best to think about, as white people and people who study whiteness, how we could make campus climates more inclusive and less hostile for students of color. Focusing on white students and maybe some of our misconceptions felt like a really important entry point that offered, we thought, hopefully some implications at kind of the one-on-one level, the structural level. And so that kind of led us to our overarching argument that, we maybe have been thinking about white students incorrectly. They don't come to campus knowing nothing about race. Though I think we often pretend that, just the right workshop or the right class will maybe, give them a new lens or offer this transformation. But by doing and assuming that we're neglecting an entire lifetime of experience that needs to be dealt with and considered and engaged. And so we think that that is actually a really enduring and useful recommendation, even in this climate where a lot of our initiatives and programs are greatly limited, resources are limited. There are still ways that I think we can accomplish some of those goals. So I'll pause there, but I think that's sort of the short and sweet of why this book and why now.
Yes, and I must admit, the empty vessel hypothesis is something that you will see a lot in the book. I really loved learning about that. And this book lays out practical strategies for campus leaders to disrupt harmful patterns of racial integration, fostering authentic, lasting change in campus culture. What advice would you give to campus leaders interested in implementing these strategies, but they're unsure how to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it could be really daunting to think about addressing campus climate, campus racial climate, and racial inclusion. And I think, especially in this context, I know that especially for folks in conservative states or primarily red states that have maybe state level legislation in addition to federal constraints, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are real limitations. And so I think some of the things that we actually see as the most important first steps perhaps are, I think engaging with this book could be really helpful. I think having conversations with colleagues and practitioners about in what way, what assumptions are we making about what students bring with them to college? I think we can have that conversation about all students. We focus primarily on white students, believing that maybe we're holding some false assumptions or false beliefs. And how do those assumptions play out in housing selection and programming, in our learning outcomes, in when students are selected into majors, in policies around student organizations in Greek life? And in what ways might those be encouraging students to learn new things, or maybe self-isolating or creating closure, even if they don't recognize it? So I think a question I often ask my students when I teach graduate classes is, who is the ideal student that we're envisioning for this program or office? Is it you? Is it a student like me? Is it a student like you? Is it someone else? And how are those assumptions showing up in the ways that we're thinking about what's best or what works? And so I think some of those same kind of pauses for reflection are also really key for some of the change that we argue for.
Well, that is extremely powerful. And it's something that I would say practitioners really should think about, creating programming and ensuring that everyone feels included.
Yeah.
Now, since the book's publication or throughout, the writing process, how has your thinking on quote unquote white noise evolved in response to current legislation and social climate surrounding DEI in higher education?
Yeah, it's a great question. In full transparency, white noise was not the original title of the book. The book has gone through several title iterations. I think another fun thing that you learn in academic publishing is like working with like what fits, what's catchy. And we also were trying to think about what is a title that is both true, but maybe less like clickbaity for it to maybe get in hands that might see this unfavorably. And I think the kind of metaphor of white noise does seem really present in the sense that when I think about white noise, it kind of seems like it's everywhere. It's nothing. It can be distracting. Maybe it can be soothing. And so I see this moment as maybe a time where white noise is either intentionally or being allowed to be turned up on the volume, that maybe other perspectives are getting drowned out by that, and that we're having less ability to maybe turn down the volume on that or disrupt that with other wavelengths, noises. I don't know. I'm bad at continuing the metaphor, but that's what I would say right now is that I think we are at a big point of loss in terms of identity-based centers, programming and resources for minoritized students, especially students of color. And I think all that means that a lot of our campuses are better equipped and still able to run the status quo for privileged students, mostly white students, and are limited in supporting minoritized students in different ways.
Yes. Thank you. Now, switching gears a bit, writing about such a heavy systemic topic requires a high level of trust.
Yeah.
Speak to how, for you and Zach, how did your collaborative relationship evolve?
Yeah, Yeah. I feel really fortunate that we have been working and writing together for pretty much the entirety of my scholarly career. We actually met, Zach was a postdoctoral scholar at the time, and I was interviewing for PhD programs. And so I was able to meet him during one of my prospective visit days. I did not end up attending that institution at the time. And one of those moments where it's like, networking or like sending that follow-up email might really make the difference, that I kind of reached out and Zach was like, do you want to write some stuff together? And so that was the beginning of what has been for me, I think for both of us, a really fruitful partnership. And so writing with anybody is incredibly vulnerable, not just in like, well, you think this idea is smart? Is this good? Does it make sense? But I think as to white people who write a lot about whiteness, I also think there are times where it's like a pulse check of, do we actually think that this is feasible? What does it mean? What's the potential resistance? Am I actually like living this out? What are ways that I'm still falling short? And so I think my relationship with Zach and our writing has both been a space to think through ideas that we hope can be useful in practice, but also reflect and sort of like own where we've messed up, process through those missteps, ask for support and processing, that I think has become increasingly mutual over time. And I think that comes through in our writing, that I think we're often now usually on the same page or very aligned, or our ideas are sort of complementary and like one of those things where 1 + 1 = more than just 2. And so I'm very grateful for that.
And I will say, when Dr. Irwin says a level of vulnerability, really connecting, networking, listen, everyone, I put myself out there and I reached out to Dr. Irwin and I wanted to talk about the book, an amazing book that I found incredibly impactful, and it really spoke to what I wrote about throughout my doctoral journey. And I took that chance, and here we are. Now, Dr. Irwin, I'd like to ask, how did you and Zach navigate disagreements or differing perspectives throughout the writing process?
Yeah. I wish I had like a more compelling answer, but I actually think the answer really goes down to like in any working relationship or like friendship, whatever, that sometimes it's pausing to listen and say like, okay, tell me more about that. Or you wrote this and this seems really interesting. Can you tell me more about where that's going or how you see this fitting? That I think I at least have always felt like whatever critique I've received from Zach has come from a real place of like curiosity. And I think that's something I try to offer when I'm wondering or giving critical feedback, or maybe thinking that I'm not seeing how something fits. And I feel like usually with that shared sense of curiosity, we can come to a place of, oh, that's really cool. I didn't think about that. Or that's a really powerful example. I actually wonder if it might fit better here, or maybe adding a little bit more would help tease that out. And so I think my biggest recommendation for any people who are writing together or working on any project together is, are there ways that you can pause and center curiosity rather than just like writing someone off? I mean, I'm sure there are instances where maybe something is more severe or harmful that does not work. And I think given the working relationship that we have, that's usually how we approach critique or points of maybe tension or misalignment at first. Yeah.
Yes. Now, Dr. Irwin, specifically to you, what specific experiences in your early student affair career made you realize that white noise wasn't just a background element, but a primary barrier to equity?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So much of my experience as a student affairs practitioner, I hope shows up still in my writing. It has really influenced the ways that I teach, that I research, that I think about the value of research. And so after completing my master's degree, I was hired to create and run a co-curricular leadership program at one of the California State University campuses. There are now multiple Cal Polys, there are now 3, but at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And some important things to know about Cal Poly is that at that time, Cal Poly was the whitest public institution in California. And so I felt that I had tools to pursue like diversity, equity, and inclusion from my grad program. I think that I had some emerging or maybe like moderate consciousness of my own whiteness. And I felt very strongly about leadership education being something that facilitated identity development and social justice and inclusion. And I think that moving back to an even whiter campus environment than the places I had gone to school required me to confront whiteness demographically, ideologically, my own whiteness in different ways. And so I was incredibly fortunate that the folks I worked with in the Center for Leadership, particularly Kelsey Bensky, Ishita Raman, Eli Williams, Jason Mockford, and Elizabeth Thomas at various points, were sort of game and incredible thought partners to like sit with, hold that, interrogate that, and really position that as central to some of the work we were doing. And so we actually used most of our staff meetings. It was like, half what are the programs we have going on? How do we support our peer leaders? And also half like, what additional reading are we doing around whiteness or critical race theory or, models about racial justice and leadership education? That was a really, honestly, sacred space for me and us to think and engage with scholarship that was giving us language to what we were seeing, different tools, and also I think to kind of increase our toolkit for thinking about how to apply that to practice. And so that was very much the work that inspired me to go back and pursue a PhD. And I think still really fuels a lot of the work that I do today.
Yes. And actually, speaking of meetings or professional development, what is the most common frequency of white noise you see overlooked in professional development or staff training?
I think there's probably a couple different ones, but one of the ones that comes to mind for me is things that feel like an attempt to be like a one size fits all or quite identity evasive. I'm sure, especially given the work that you do, that feels really relevant. One of my early experiences with that is I used to be someone who facilitated a lot of Clifton Strengths or Strengths Quest education. And one of the things that I felt uncomfortable with initially, and with a lot of tools like that, is that they can be really great and offer some really helpful language for like, oh yeah, of course, like, achiever, that makes sense that I'm really drawn to do these things. And the more that I engage with some of those tools, and I would say some other kind of broad strokes professional development, I think neglecting the realities of racism, sexism, transphobia can sort of negate or undermine the real challenges that people face. And so, I think a great example is I went to a presentation that John Dugan and Natasha Turman and others gave a number of years ago. And Natasha is a Black woman and was talking about, I think it was command being one of her strengths, and saying, I can't just like use that sort of like authoritative sense in any meeting because then I get labeled as the angry Black woman. But a white man doing that is like, oh, he's a great leader, promote him immediately. And so I think considerations like that of identity and systems of oppression, to me, feel like they have to be part of a conversation of mentoring, of leadership development, of coaching, of well-intentioned things like strengths or true color, some of those sorts of things. So that would be my quick answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of programming, how can mentorship programming be restructured to move away from assimilation towards a model that centers on existing identities?
Yeah. I know that mentorship is much more your expertise than mine. And I think a question that I have across higher ed is, in what ways are we trying to fit people into a particular mold? And I think often that mold is a mold of whiteness or white masculinity. And so thinking about, what ways are we recognizing the talents and assets and forms of wealth that people bring versus trying to say, this is the right way to do this job. Zach recently wrote a piece with Melvin Whitehead, who I really respect, and they writing actually about whiteness and mentoring programs. And I was revisiting that before our conversation, and they draw on some of Tara Yoso's work around community cultural wealth and a recognition that particularly racially minoritized communities bring multiple assets that are not often valued by dominant institutions. And so recognizing that those folks often have long histories and communities that are really rich in activism and resistance, might be able to speak multiple languages or code switch in different ways. And how do we start from a place of wanting to honor and value people's strengths and talents and assets rather than assuming from a place of lack? So I think that's kind of maybe a paradigm shift or a recommendation that feels front of mind to me.
Yes, thank you. I completely agree. Mentorship programming can be challenging. Completely understand that through my research, Dr. Irwin, I know through your research, when you're trying to develop mentorship program to serve a diverse campus, diverse student body, and how do you ensure that as many members of that student body are able to develop and grow in ways in which it makes sense for them? I understand that.
Yeah.
This book, I will forever highlight this book, everyone.
Thank you.
going by this right now. It helps you make sense of really how to navigate a lot of programming challenges that many people face, either through legislation or just
Mhm.
social challenges. Now, Dr. Irwin, to put you on a spot,
Great.
what emerging trend or challenge, if you were to write
Mhm.
a new chapter to the book today,
Yeah.
what trend or challenge in higher education would you address?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In full transparency, most of the book was written before the beginning of Trump's second term. So for anyone not familiar, academic publishing is often incredibly slow. And so this book we started writing in 2023, right? And so here we are in 2026. And so I think that we were not naive to that context sort of being on the horizon, and there was a rise of sort of state level bills. And I think in the time we finished writing and collecting data, to now, in some ways, our landscape has shifted a lot. And so I think maybe something is maybe less of a chapter, but I wish that there could be an opportunity in a perfect world to immediately be able to do additional longitudinal work on each of our contexts. So like go back and do additional interviews with the folks in housing now in this context or in leadership programs or something, because I think I wonder how that is shaping some of the challenges that we saw, maybe exacerbating them. So that comes to mind. I think we also, yeah, I'll pause there. That's the first, that's what comes to mind right now. Yeah.
All right. And for the viewers out there, and this interview has been outstanding, and we will get Zach to, he will be part of an interview. I promise everyone.
We'll do a part two.
Yes. Scheduling conflict.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Irwin, what is one low stakes way a professional can begin disrupting white noise in their immediate department or office tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think beyond some of what I shared earlier, Zach and I both often turn back to theories of student development as really helpful. And so for those who are maybe not familiar or could use a refresher from the last time you took a student development theory course, I think a theoretical concept that we found really useful was thinking about notions of subject-object distinction. So before I get too technical, that basically means whether or not something is like solely defining and consuming us versus we might have some distance and be able to reflect on it. I think a great example of this is actually from Dr. Chris Wren. When I took student development theory with her, talked about, when you're with a toddler and something is wrong and they're having a temper tantrum, they are only rage and crying and tears, right? There's like nothing else. They are just absolutely subject to their emotions. Versus maybe later, as you've matured and developed, you might be able to say, wow, I'm feeling really upset right now, and sort of like hold out that emotion and feeling as sort of like an object to examine, right? You can have some distance from that. And so I think that that's a same practice that all of us can use with ourselves and with the students that we are in relationship with, whether it's an advising meeting, a whole council, to kind of pause and ask about their pre-college experiences. What were the racial demographics of your K-12 school? Why do you think that was? What about your neighborhood? What conversations did you have with parents or teachers during, the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in like 2020 and 2021? What were those conversations like? Were your peers having similar conversations? And offering and kind of role modeling that as something that is able to and worthy of considering and reflecting on, rather than just like an inherent truth that shouldn't be questioned, I think is one important first step towards maybe disrupting some of this, and even doing that with ourselves too.
Yes, Dr. Irwin, I truly appreciate this opportunity. It has been amazing. It has been an honor. I would like to ask, what overall has been the reaction of this amazing book?
Oh, I think that we've been really touched by the enthusiasm that we've received from folks like yourself. And so thank you to folks who have engaged with it and read it. It feels really exciting to be able to start having some conversations like this with colleagues, on student affairs podcasts or different professional associations. And so we look forward to questions, to how folks are using it, things that we might have missed, things that you think we should consider further. So yeah, thank you for your willingness to engage and to invite me here today. So thank you.
Yes, Dr. Irwin, where can the viewers purchase your book? I will put the discount code in the description, everyone. So please go buy that. Now, where can they buy it?
Yes. The best place and the place where the discount code will work is from the Harvard Education Press website. That's where you can buy it directly. It's also available on Amazon. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, most local and independent bookstores have it available online. And so if you were to order a copy, they might order a couple more. And in a time where libraries are under attack, I think if you could even request your library to have a copy, or through Libby, whatever it is, it's a great chance to do that. But I would say the two probably quickest ways are from Harvard Ed Press or Amazon.
And for anyone out there, Dr. Irwin, that is interested in reaching out to offer their thoughts or reflections, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, great question. I am on LinkedIn pretty regularly and find that to be a really generative space to engage, especially with practitioners. So my name, you can search that on LinkedIn, or I can also share my email to share in the notes. Zach and I welcome email conversations. If there's a way that we could support learning on your campus or in your organization, we'd be glad to connect.
And lastly, Dr. Irwin, what takeaways from this interview should viewers leave with?
Oh, great question. I think when we're thinking about white students in particular, what I would encourage folks to remember is that every white person, every white college student you engage with is coming to college with a lifetime of socialization and knowledge about race. It's not that white people are ignorant or unaware of race. They are keenly aware. White people are keenly aware of the racial demographics, the segregation of their neighborhoods, but often have been told and taught to ignore that by authoritative adults. And so if we want to make real progress on college campuses around diversity and racial climate and reducing hostility and marginalization for students of color, one way that I think we can make some progress is by engaging and reckoning with the lifetime of knowledge that white students bring about race. So that's what I would offer.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Irwin. I truly appreciate this opportunity. Any viewer that watches this, you will have really witnessed an amazing moment in that discussing disrupting white noise is something that I do not take for granted. As you can see, I've read the book once already. I still have 3 to 4 more times to read this book because there are so many gems in this book that one time is not enough.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Irwin. Thank you so much. The viewers I know they will have loved and appreciated this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Please reach out. I will put Dr. Irwin and I will put Dr. Foste's email and their contact information in the description, along with how you can purchase the book. Also included will be the discount code.